Is it still laggy, or can you see the screen and can you hear me? If yes, you did not catch anything from the previous stream. Perfect. 20 minutes of time wasted. I'm really sorry about that, but I have no experience with all the tech setup and I thought it's running. And for now, we don't know if it's my connection, but if this one's running, I don't think so, but we will check. So nothing really worked, but it's running now. Then it's awesome. And if there's something, just escalate in the chat. I will keep it open all the time. So you should be able to see my screen. Yes. I will open the chat on the right. Then, hurrah, it's working. Perfect. So is try to somebody else, I think, is sharing screen. No? Okay, I can also see you guys. That's a little bit more personal. So let us continue. What are the main questions you have? I don't know. If you have access to the old chat, you can maybe just copy paste them in here. And otherwise, so there is the chat. I could not hear this was answered in the Q&A already. Yeah, no, I think nobody was able to hear it except myself. So we will just repeat it. For analysis in terms of looking for volume profile variance, example, in this new session, to the bar opened within the value area. You mean to this session? What do I do for round the clock markets like in futures are not 24/7? So what do you mean with around the clock markets like futures? In regards to swing trading, I'm based in the US on the West Coast. Would it be appropriate for me to just look at the regular business hours for the US markets if I'm trading FDAX? So if you're trading FDAX, and you go to a higher, so you can define the session profile if it's 24-hour or if it's reduced to a specific time frame. And depending on the area you're living in, but you can always compare it like we already answered in the, I'll show you. Andrea did the example. So go to the stock exchange, to the website of the exchange you're trading. They define the trading hours, but you can always double check if the calculation between the time horizon or time zones is valid by just taking the volume. For example, if you take the FDAX today, you can see the first volume increase is 850, but the cash session is from 9 to 17:30 in this case. So this will be the cash session. You can check on yesterday's volume, where's the volume decreasing most. You can see there is a spike at 17:30 because it's the closing auction of the regular trading hour. So even without going to the website, just analyzing the volume profile here on the low side, you can see that the first volume spike is here at 9. And the highest volume spike in the closing area, which is in this area, is at 17:30. So this is the cash session, and now you have your cash session. And that way, even without the profile, market profile, without a volume profile, you also have then the opening at 9, and you can also check for the closing price at 17:30. And then you have your cash session. And that way you can also have your profile. And that way you can like double check if your settings are correct. I think, or I hope that I answered the question. I think somebody is not muted and somebody's also MS is sharing his screen. I just muted you. Unfortunately, I got answer from search. It was basically straight from ChatGPT. But what's your personal approach? I just explained my personal approach. That is the double check. And you can do it with every liquid asset. You can also do it with DES. You can do it with all of the futures. Does market behave differently between EU session and US session and around daily settlement period? Yes, they do. There is so the highest liquidity. I can speak from German time perspective, but or the most market participants are active. Do I have still the Asian session indicator? I think there is a very good session indicator. Let me check. Is it that one? Mm, no, it's that one. So there you can see, yeah, I think that one it is. Just remove the second one. So when you see the different sessions, so Asian session, European session, it's an old setting. I would need to update the session because here now the open is at 8, I think. So it's 1 hour pre-market. But if you just take the cash sessions, there will be, or the sessions where the people will be awake. So as you can see, the setting in this case is fucked up. I can now correct the settings. No, it's going to be too complicated. But our indicators, we can just set the times. And then there's an overlay between two sessions. Let me check if there is. Was it that one? Yeah, there's the open. It's at 8. Or the settings. So GT 22. Let's say until 7. We started 9 until 17:30. New York 14:30 until 22. So this is kind of basic settings for the different future. Why is it not updating? Maybe we need some times because trading is sometimes kind of slow. But there is an overlap between when the US session steps in. So when they step in or get awake and wake up and go to work at 14:30, there is this area where there will be Europeans and US people in the market. So from 14:30, why is it not working? So in this time today, the US participants will step in the market. This is now the FDAX. So the FDAX close will be at 17:30, but still, of course, afterwards, the US people still will trade in there. And very often, the US reverses the moves that happened in the European session because they also need liquidity and a lot of people, and also day traders are in profit here, but also the institutions want to buy cheap and they want to buy expensive. And for a day like this today, the price already is kind of expensive. We had a very extensive move, and markets behave differently because very often at 14:30, for example, for the FDAX, but also for currencies, the move of the morning is reversed. And also, for example, the daily open very often is taken out. But in this case, yeah, markets behave different because you can see pre-open and at the open, there's a big move. And very likely the initial balance is also very big, and we had a lot of volatility in the first trading hour. So the likelihood of us not continuing with the trend day and more or less reversing will be there. And then we also had like a P setup, and I think Tom also shared it. I wasn't checking the order book today because I had no time to trade, sadly. But we had a breakout, and most likely in the order book you would also have seen, and also in the footprint, that there's less and less volume and less trading activity. Now there's accumulation. You can think about shorting or having a short until the impulse start is getting taken out. Or in my case, I would also target the lows up here. But yeah, there is different behavior because you can see volume spikes when, like here, when the sessions finish, but also volume spikes when the sessions open. And markets behave differently. You can also see in the Asian markets, the markets behave differently because there's less liquidity. So they behave differently most of the time, or very often the US reverses the EU session. How far is volume profile of the day? From midnight, Central Easterly, or something else? No, you can use the session volume. Profiles, and then there's session time price opportunity, but there's also volume profile for the session. And in that volume profile, you can define either you want to have it 24 hours or you can want to have it custom. In this case, we can start at 9 and finish at 19:30. And now we have the volume profile, as we can see, from the opening until 17:30. So now this is the volume profile of the cash session. That's it. And you need to do this for the market you trade. But this is now the example for the FDAX, and you can do the same when you need take the session time price opportunity. There is now the volume profile always in it. Hopefully, TradingView will change that one day, but we can remove the volume profile because we've just set it up. We can take here, customize it from 9, because I think about the time. I need to think about a solution, but how we can explain this in better detail, because so many questions are about the cash session and regular trading hours and extended trading hours, and it's just as simple as that. So now we have a market profile and the volume profile for the cash session. Let's remove that one. And that way we can analyze from yesterday. Hi. Was soll ich reinkommen? Ein bisschen Technikschwierigkeiten. Patrick just joined. And are there any questions for Patrick when he's here currently? Because through the technical questions we can also go afterwards. So, versuch mal zu übersetzen, falls welche kommen. For the weekly profile, Tom was showing where they only cash session or including Globex extended trading hours, right? Could you please clarify the question? It's so difficult to understand them. For weekly profiles, Tom was showing the weekly profiles are 24-hour profiles.
24-hour, yeah.
Yeah. Why Search was using unadjusted chart in his business zones, although you use adjusted. I don't use volume adjusted charts in TradingView because TradingView does not have the possibility. That we also explained that in the Discord. There's one section all about it. And in Sierra chart, the settings, I don't know if Search has changed it, but usually the settings are regular that it's volume based back adjusted. So as I explained, when there's more volume in the following contract is getting taken. So you always take the price and back adjustment that you have the price of the contract with the highest volume, and we do that because backtests it has been the best, but that is not able to do in TradingView yet. I've skipped your question. What was your question? Red goal. In Edge for business zones, you mentioned something about cheat sheet, PVD, PB setups. Is it an actual document somewhere? A cheat sheet? I don't know what you mean. If there is a cheat sheet or not.
Was ist das Cheat Sheet?
Also, Spickzettel.
Ah,
Spickzettel.
doch, die wollten doch ein Dokument auf Englisch übersetzen.
Mit den Zeiten?
Nee, was, wo, wann?
PBDs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then seems like there is a document in work for the PBD setups.
I think so,
PVD?
yeah.
What do you mean with PVD? So there are some screenshots. Let me, can I open, well, we can open it so everybody can see it. You should be able to see this screenshot. So there's a question below, it's perfect. Should the trade be closed fully or partially if price has not yet reached the final target, but a setup for a reverse entry is formed along the way? So you entered short. Just move that way. So you had a B setup. You had most likely business zone. You had a pullback. Perfect, beautiful. The entry, I don't understand the logic of the entry over here. So could you please clarify that? Then you have an impulse. You had a target down there. I don't know what that is. And the red dots, I don't know as well. And then you say that on a lower time frame, a P shape was formed here. So yes, the first reversal setup is correct. So we have like a B shape here. Then we had a breakout, we had a break in, so we had a fake out to the downside. So in this case, yes, it is a first indication. In this case, very often I would at least trail my stop loss above the business zone, or take. I would not trade it to break even. A lot of people trail to break even without a logic. If break even has no logic, it's just the fear of losing money. But don't trail to break even without a reason. But maybe trail here above the business zone is to reduce your risk at least. But yeah, it's valid to exit a trade if setup like this formed, because the idea was to have a strong push, most likely. I don't know what time frame it is, but it looks like a day trade or intraday swing trade. And then, yeah. So there was another picture. By the way, questions like those are perfectly prepared, and that's very nice because it's very good to explain them that way. Let me close the other window and now share the second picture. So in this case, the closing of the green candle. Okay, green candle. Which green candle? Occurs only 3 ticks above the upper boundary of the range. Ah, you mean that one. This is only 3 ticks above this range. So this is your P setup. You have 1 higher close, 2 higher closes, 1 lower close. This is no lower close. So this line is invalid. This line is not valid. After which the price returns to range. Should one enter a short position immediately upon the price return to range, or is it better to wait for a close below? Yes, you wait. This is no valid entry setup. I mean, it is a valid entry setup if you just take the business zones and see this as an accumulation. But on this time frame, 5 minutes, this is no valid B setup. And you would wait for 2 lower closes to have a rule confirmation. But of course, you can also enter with a pullback, but setting the stop loss would be difficult in this case, I think. So I would wait for 2 lower closes below the boundary until the setup is confirmed completely. But yeah. Thanks for those very well prepared. Can you see? Am I sharing actually the screen? Let me check. Zoom. Where is Zoom? Yeah, I just saw the picture. Perfect. So another question. As I know, you're able to mute and turn off the camera of others. Ah, good to know. I would like to understand how the CERNs were traced in Tom's daily analysis, because looking at mine, they don't match. For that, we need to pull up Tom's analysis. I haven't seen it yet, but let me just open Tom's trades. He posted in day trading, right? So I will just download it. Open in browser. So I opened both of them. Now I will share them. Hast du einen Trade umgesetzt? Oder kam er zu spät von Tom?
War ja nicht am Rechner.
Ah. So. Safari. So those have been close this window. So picture number one, FTX short idea, liquidity is over. So yes, most likely the order book has been slowing down. And exit at a high liquidity level from footprint. So he said this was the impulse. So Tom's trade idea was that this was the very extreme impulse. And here in the footprint, he said, okay, where is the first high volume area kind of? So you see a very low volume area here. First high volume spike is here. So his idea was to take a very short trade until that high, it's not really a high volume area, but the next highest volume area to the downside. So, but your question was where the zone was traced from. There are no zones in here. I don't see business zones in those screenshots. You should clarify your question, or could clarify would be perfect. So for day trading, you put more weight on business zones from long time frame, composite volume profile, or those from previous day value area high or low if they are in separate locations and combining them yields to wide the business zones. So if you have several business zones in your chart, for example, you have the weekly and the daily, you always want to align them both. At least I do it that way.
Ob du mal beide rein. Ja, so me too.
So I hope you're well. I had some question. If naked value area high, value area low, VPOCs are touched during the overnight session, do we consider them used? No. I would consider them naked until market touches them. If they're naked POCs and it's just the Asia session with two contracts has taken the POC, I would still view them as naked. And also when you have the profile sessions set up like this, and you extend in Sierra chart, then and you only extend in the, let me show you the profiles. If you have a profile like this and you set it to the cash sessions, they will get extended. So second, what signs do you watch out when your trade is slowing down before reaching profit level, counter trade level, or even goes? What signs do you watch out for when your trade is slowing down before reaching your profit level, counter trade level, or even goes in the drawdown? That helps you decide if you should stick around close or close the position. I don't monitor the position that actively. I don't have the time to do it. But when you actively day trade, then of course you have a long idea and you see a counter setup. It is valid, as we discussed in the example before, that you at least trail the stop loss and reduce the risk, or also take counter position. So when you're very active day trading, you have a long idea and there's a perfect short idea during the long idea forming, you're not married to the long idea. And you can also then take the trade idea, close the long idea, or just open both and make fill or kill. How do we use visual range profile, VPBR? Okay, so he's talking about the one here on the left. With the world-class edge, WEC, world-class edge strategy. It's not a world-class edge strategy. It's world-class edge is more the education brand, and they ask if we can be the first educators, and that's also why maybe not everything also on the technical side is running that smooth. VPBR with the world-class or the TTT strategy. Well, I know its use was shown in the big picture in the mountains and valley structure, but after seeing Tom's chart incorporating weekly levels, how can we still make use of this? So as I've shown in the stream, for example, if you have the idea or the thesis that German economy will recover and will be very nice this year, and you want to check for a long idea on the DAX, although I don't think so, but for a short idea, it can be the same. So let us go for the first example for a long idea. Let me share my screen. So then you have the FDAX, and you say you have a daily because you want to trade for a couple of weeks, months, maybe for the whole year because you think German economies will recover. Then on the left side, you have mountains and valleys. And no, I don't scroll back that far because it makes no sense because I don't care about the price movements and volume down there because it's not relevant for the things I'm looking for. So just take like the uptrend, and it doesn't matter. There's no fixed rule how far you go back, just so that you have a very good overview over the asset and the price behavior in the past. And then now you have mountains and you have valleys, and then you have mountains and you have valleys, another valley, and then you have mountains again. So if I want to look out for a long idea, I just check where is the next valley. So if I want to scale in very aggressively, you can see that here there would be the first kind of valley, but I don't like it, and it's a very, very, very aggressive entry. But by rule, this could be a first entry area, and where do you hide your stop loss? On the high volume area, which is over there. So it could be a first idea for long, but I would wait for a real valley and a real low volume area, and that one's down there. And that way you can just check for long trades here. Either you can just limit in and say, okay, this is your trade idea because you think Germany economy and German car makers will recover. We'll just take a 1 to 3 risk reward because there is no naked POC to the left, and you want to swing trade for the whole year. So you can give it some room to the upside, and that way you have your trade idea. Then when we are in this area, you can go to the lower time frame, maybe to daily profiles, and check them. So what take profit target can we focus on when the market opens completely outside of the 3 to 4 business zones that we've developed? Either from the back adjusted volume, back adjusted when you use zero chart, naked value area, or POC. And in trading, you need to take a fixed risk to reward because the back adjustment is wrong. So something of that. Otherwise, just a fixed risk to reward, or you just check for the volatility. For example, when we just go to the FDAX, we say, okay, we open outside and we don't have a naked POC or value area or single print to the left. We share the screen again. Then when we have nothing to the left and we're looking for a long idea because the open now was above yesterday's. See, we had yesterday's profile. We are in an uptrend. We opened today above, and we're checking for a long trade, and there is no target to the left. You can just take, like, most of the time, I just take into account the volatility of the previous days. And then, for example, if I would check for a long trade above this P, although I don't think that we are continuing that aggressive today. If we would check for a long idea, I mean, that would be the case. We now close above, have a pullback, and then we check for a long trade. Where do we take profits? I would take at least a 1 to 3 risk to reward, so that would be the minimum. But in this case, if you just compare how far we moved just this morning, I think in this case you could extend the take profit to a 1 to 4, 1 to 5. But most of the time, in the past when I made a day trade like this, I watched or I monitored the trade, And I was just checking when the speed's going out of the market. So when there's liquidity going down, the order book is getting slower, and in the footprint or in general there's less volume or a B setup is forming. So when then there's something like a B setup forming here, just trail stop loss or you just go out of your position. But it's my preferred way. If you don't monitor that much, you can just take a fixed 1 to 2, 1 to 3 with 2 watts and just let it run without managing it that active. So I think now from the first question we've answered all, but then we will now go to the lower questions. So do you use the session from 9 to 17:30 because that's basically the New York and London session combined? No, it's not New York and London session combined, it's the cash session of the FDAX. That's why we use it. And yes, we mainly ignore Tokyo and Sydney because they're, as you can see, is an example of the FDAX. If you trade the Nikkei, it's completely different. So if you're in Japan and you trade the Nikkei or you trade the Hang Seng in China, it's different. It's not the same. But you can see for the FDAX, what's this? When you take 20 contracts, you're going to move the whole market. And that's not good. So how much relevance, how can I learn directly from search? You need to text him directly for that. How much relevance does fundamental macro analysis have in intraday trading or swing trading? If I understand correct me if I'm wrong, that the analyze this must be carried out on the futures market and then proceed if necessary with the execution on CFDs. So yes, the question with analyzing the future and then transferring it to the CFD is correct. And can we see some Forex example? So when we take any currency, let me open up currency. So when we take, let's take dollar continuing to dominate. It's crazy. So let's just take the Australian dollar, the Aussie. So 6A is AUD USD. I don't want direct message. So, and we say we are now looking for a short setup, for example, or we are waiting until this be already established. It is already established, and either we are looking for a fake breakout to the upside, fake break in, and then a short, or a breakout to the downside, break in, and then a long setup. This could be our idea, and we can also take the profiles into account. So I haven't checked now the session time frame, so don't copycat it, but can just create a business zone. And that way we can it's not very detailed because this is the settings are too high. And in this case, I think now it is a 24-hour profile, but for this trade in dollar, it's also fine because they are awake at night. But I would decrease the tick size. But trading is still very slow with that, as you can see. But they're continuing to improve it. But let us say, okay, so those are our business zones. Take the single print into account. Go to a low time frame. Now we have our B setup formed. So it's a business zone of the day today. So those are maybe going to be the business zones for the business zones for tomorrow. Let us take or draw the ones from today. So the ones for today are value area high. What's an interesting area? It's the POC. So I take this POC in this case. And value area low. No, really interesting area. Go just take this volume, the small volume spike, because it is also aligning with that one. So we'll draw the zone like this, but there are days where the zone is clear, but it's part of the game. And then we just go to a lower time frame and we say, okay, those are our business zones. We have a trade idea here. So if we get a reversal setup, we want to trade until here. If we get a continuation setup, of course, we continue to the downside. But if we want to now implement this on the CFD, just open the CFD. So we can split. So we can split, we can go to the market next and then go AUD USD. Go to FXCM and you can see we analyze from the volume profile and general the markets in the future, but on this side, you can also already see the price difference. So in the future, we have yet not taken out the slow, but in the CFD, we've taken out the slow. But we now wait for entry signal on the future. And if we want to take a long idea, let's say we want to, we don't have a long setup yet, a valid long setup. That's why I don't want to enter. But let's say we go out, we go in, we break this high, then we would have a valid long setup. Then we say we want to enter long position here, or stop loss below, and take profits over there. Now, it's delayed, so that's why the CFD is in advance. There's 10-minute delay in this data. But if we then want to trade to the upside, you can see the structure in here is the same as here, or kind of nearly the same. So if a structure like this forms in here, it will also form in the CFD, and then we just take the take profits to the same level. As you can see, the take profit here is on the impulse begin or impulse start, and the ones over here. So there's your take profit. And if we have like this, also here's your entry. That's an example how you implement it on the CFD. In Tom's daily outlook doc, Ablaufplan, Planung. I haven't seen the doc yet. There is a line estimate the probability of the gap closing. I'm wondering if there is a systematic way to derive an actual percentage of this probability, or if it's more about combining several indicators. Cannot define a probability about the likelihood of gap being closed, because if something is a technical or a fundamental gap, is very subjective. It is subjective because every night there are fundamental news, and if the gap is only technical or the fundamental news is relevant enough to reason or to be a reason for that gap, is subjective to the trader. So you can, of course, try to automate this, maybe with ChatGPT and LLMs, that's possible. They scan through the news and then they qualify if it's relevant or not. But the approach in general is if there are big news, war starting, there's some voting, there's a terror attack, whatever. Of course, it's a fundamental gap when market participants act based on this. But if there's just a gap and you go to the news and there's nothing really new, there's just maybe, I don't know, just minor news that are not really relevant. It's a technical gap, and then we think that the gaps has a higher likelihood of, or the likelihood is very high of being closed. If there's a systematic way to derive an actual percentage for this probability, or if it's not more about combining several indicators such as business zones, overlapping profiles. Yes, the strategies, our approach is always a combination of all of them. So there are different approaches, and those are always the puzzles we talk about, and you need to adapt them for you and what works for you, and then you need to get used for it. It's not copycat, it's not learn it and copycat, it's learn it, understand it, and then adapt it to yourself. Because I'm doing it differently, or I have minor changes than Patrick, than Tom, than Serge. Everybody has his individual, although the base approach and logic is the same. I mean, the daily analysis from, I know what search analyzers are for the elite program, but if you can rely just to understand the areas of the design, he decided them. Yes, I asked him what he thinks about. Have no feedback for now. We're discussing if we can just add maybe 3 letters. What's the reason, or what's the other area of the zone? But as you can see in the example, I just took what you write in there. There is no, for the lower business zone that I just created in the Aussie. There was no. I mean, there was low volume, high volume. It's difficult. I mean, sometimes yes, there is a business zone where you have value area high in the POC, or a value area high in the low volume area, but there is not something like this always. We have another picture with a question. Let us open it. I think in 7 more minutes, I also need to go. I know there was a lot of delay, but I think all in all, we can also save the question for the next Q&A. But I have continued to another appointment. Candles 2, 3 close above. So candles 2, 3 close above. The closing price of candle 1, correct. Thus forming the lower boundary of the range. Yes. Candles 3, 4 close below candles 3 and 4 close below candle 2, the upper boundary. Candle 5 closes 3 ticks above the range. Candle 4 closes back within the range. With the listed elements does not align with the B pattern. It is the first most aggressive B pattern that you have there, but it's not a beautiful one. It's a range. I cannot even say, or I try to explain why, but the move out of the box is not high enough. It's more the combination of the business zone, a pullback, and a B setup. And in this case, I personally would have waited for the breakout to the downside, or scale in on a pullback of the business zone. But it's personal preference. All in all, it is a valid B pattern. Maybe I made a mistake in the beginning when the picture was up there once, but it is a valid B pattern and a range below the business zone. I think that's a question, and questions answered. So the 6A future market. So the 6A is the future market for Euro USD. No, Aussie, Australian dollar, US dollar. Forex have future market, yes. The big main currencies in the Forex market have future markets, and in those future markets, you always have the currency against the US dollar. Are futures usually leading CFD or vice versa? Most of the time they're leading, because CFDs are always based on an underlying, and the future is a way better regulated product than the CFD. But as Forex markets are decentralized, there are participants in the markets that arbitrage between, or CFD, future, and spot settlement. So you have different markets, and there are institutions that arbitrage. So depending on their activity, it depends on what asset is delaying or not, or where is the biggest volume. So another picture. So in my observation of the VWAP, the previous trading session often serves as a reversal point. The previous trading session in general as a reversal point. Okay. Do you use VWAP of one of the previous session as potential target for price movement? Do you use it? No, I don't use it, but I think Search sometimes uses the VWAP, but I don't use it. for price movement or as a level for identifying entry setups. I don't use it. Do you use VWAP?
No.
No. I think Serge has it on his screen, and I think he also uses it. And Tom, I'm not sure about. We can ask him in the next Q&A next week. German question, I will just translate it. Can I help how you set up the order in the right time because he's missing his entries because he needs too long to recognize the patterns, lot size, and so on. So for recognizing the pattern, you just need to exercise and train, and the more often you do it, the better you get. And for calculating risk, I just know the way I did it in, for example, fuck, just share my screen. When, for example, you trade through through TradingView, then you can just have this tool. You can connect to your broker. You say, okay, now this is the pullback because I want to pull back on that area. I think that should now have also formed on the future. Yes, 10-minute delay. Of course, there shouldn't be a delay when you day trade, you need to have the data. So this is our trade idea, and then you just right click and then you make like limit order. And when you have connected a broker, can I do paper trading? Maybe then I can show it to you. So when you right click, but also when you've connected the broker, you can just type in the risk. So you can say your stop loss is the risk of $2.50, and you just say, okay, now the risk is 200. That's it. So there is no sell limit, take profit, although it's too low. I think something they all work. But that way you can calculate your risk very fast. So if you define the risk to 200 and sell it, there you can see it. And now there's your risk, and you can also, the risk adapts individually and on where you put your take profit or stop loss. So that's the way I did it. I think that's also possible in MetaTrader because most people trading currencies use MetaTrader. It was also possible on Interactive Brokers, but that way you need to check your software. Another picture. I think then at some point we need to wrap it up. So that's the picture. Given the business zones for ES and NQ shown in the screenshots, is it possible to consider entering a long position on NQ if ES? No, two different assets. If ES is below its designated business zone. So this is the first sign of weakening. Yes, ES and NQ, of course, they correlate, and very often you have a time-wise correlation of a couple of seconds between the S and NQ, and there are some strategies working around that. And yes, when the NQ is weak or below an important zone, or in the S in this example, so on the upside there's the S, downside there's the Nasdaq. You can think about taking a short, but it's risky. I would wait for confirmation of both. But all in all, I would view them as individual assets. Of course, you can have them open next to each other, but if you take a trade, don't take a trade in ES based on Nasdaq. That is kind of more advanced stuff. If you're used to it and you view it for a long time, I think Serge is doing that when he's scalping. He's also watching both of the markets parallel, also the order books. Yes, this is possible on the technical side. You could also extend this with the FDAX because they correlate, but in the beginning, for learning purposes, I would view them individually. Hey, Patrick and Jonathan, I would like to know, did you combine the TPOs print in the ES or Nasdaq to smooth out the profile? Ob du die Profile von Nasdaq und ES kombinierst, um die Profile sauberer zu machen.
Eigentlich nicht. I only trade ES because Nasdaq is too fast for me.
Same here. But no, we don't combine it. I don't know anybody combining it. I don't know if it's working. Maybe it's working. I've never tested it. Maybe you can test it and then get feedback. For PBD setups, I don't need to track the volume profile of the previous day. No. Did you prefer the 4 patterns of the basic course or the PBD pattern? What do you mean with the 4 patterns of the basic course? You mean the volume profile? It's a combination of both. I don't prefer anything. I use all of them. Question, can edges that TTT teaches be applied to equity markets, not just futures forex? If so, you do have any recommendations on other things I should screen for the first increased probability stuff? Yes, we also use it for stocks, and we will have, or I will, maybe in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we will have a very long live session where I will show you setups with stocks, applying this to stocks, mostly US stocks, because commission's low and there are a lot of them. Yes, you can use this also on other assets. Logic is the same, although the volume profile, of course, very often gets very difficult. And if there is no cash session, just take a 24-hour profile, but then the initial balance has no relevance, and also the opening and closing has way less relevance if you have a 24-hour market. Can we see an example of setting volume profile, market profile, TPO, and TradingView? I showed in the beginning, and you will be able to see it in the recording. I can show it to you quickly. So this is the setting for FDAX for the volume profile, and this is the setting for the market profile. But it's not basic setting. You don't need to copycat it. You need to understand the logic why I set it to these settings, and then you need to be able to apply it to yourself. Otherwise, you need to give it a rewatch or tell questions to understand the logic and the concept, and not individual settings for individual markets. Thanks for the answers. You're very welcome. Seems like we did all the questions. I'm 4 minutes late. I will need to hop on another meeting to work, but I'm really sorry about the delay in the beginning. I think the next time we'll just take Zoom and not the software that we used, because maybe it was my connection, maybe it was the tech, maybe it was the software, maybe it was another server. I don't know. Zoom seems to be running very good. And if you have questions, the screenshot questions have been, I think, very nice from the technical side, because I have like the questions directly next to the picture. And I think maybe you can provide some feedback also, what's the best value for you guys to answer those questions. And otherwise, later today or tomorrow, I will go through the open Discord questions that I haven't answered yet, but I hope you guys can understand that I cannot be there 24/7. Thank you very much for still being here and going through all the tech disturbances and moving around of the apartments. We will improve and it will be get better. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye. Have a very nice day and very nice evening or weekend.
See you.
Bye.